Hi, how's it going?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
It's really nice to actually meet you, meet you rather, and to have a really interesting conversation today. Uh,
Yeah, no, that's it.
yeah, about your riding career and about Equibody Fitness and everything to do with horses as well. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for joining today.
of course. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
We have a very interesting lineup of questions for you today, so let's
Okay.
just jump right into it. What sparked your interest in horses and what drew you specifically to the discipline of dressage?
Yeah, so I just turned 22. And so when I was 10, my mom and I started riding together. So she was 43, I was 10. And she was like, I kind of want to go learn to ride. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool. And so I yeah, just jumped in it with her, and then it kind of grew from there. We started like a 100 jumper barn, just learning basics, and then I tried dressage, and she tried it. We were both like, "I like this," and so pretty early on, I got into dressage, and I was like, I like this," and then we just kind of grew from there and kept going and going and going and going with new trainers, and just got plugged into the dressage world.
Wow, that's a really interesting story to know that you started with your mom and all that. So that's really interesting. Then what about, could you share like an inspiration behind creating Equibody Fitness and how has it, positively made an impact in your riding career?
Yeah. So I think about 2.5 years ago, my brother asked me why I wasn't doing anything related to horses and fitness. And I was like, that's a good question. And so I started to explore it. And then about a year and a half ago, I basically, I was getting ready to show Grand Prix. It was my first Grand Prix test. And we were like getting ready. And I was so stiff and tight and locked up in my own body that I could not get the PI for Passage, which is very important for Grand Prix. And so, so 3 weeks out, I I had a very extensive background in the strength side. And so I've been working out my whole life. I had like coached a few friends, like done stuff like that. But I was like, I gotta figure out this. Like I can't use my body the way that I need to. And so for me, it was my hip flexors and my hamstrings. Those were my two big tightest spots. My thought process was, okay, if I can do the splits, my hip flexors and hamstrings probably won't be tight. And so I just started working on it, and I did like a pretty big deep dive into the mobility and flexibility world. And then within 3 weeks of like implementing some new exercises, I dropped my stirrups 3 holes, which is a lot. And then I yeah, and then uh I yeah, went and I competed, and it the show didn't go great. My horse was very challenging, but I was able to like actually feel and use my body, which was good, and do the stuff that needed doing.
Wow, that's
And
really
so from
inspiring. Yeah.
yeah, from there it was just kind of like, oh, okay. I've heard my entire life that people have struggled with this, just feeling like they can't use their body, like they're stiff and like they're tight, and riding makes that worse. And I was like, okay, well, worked for me. And so we started seeing how it can help other people.
Yeah, I like how, you came across a challenge and the way you kind of revolutionized that and you found an answer to it and it's within your own brand, which is really inspiring. So, yeah. Then when it comes to benefiting riders, right? What specific aspects of fitness do you prioritize and focus on mainly?
Yeah. So I like to, because it gets lost in the social media, because social media does not do well with nuance. The way that I like to think about it is, okay, if I want to get better at riding, I am going to ride more. That is the best way to get better at riding, right? So if I want to ride better, I'm just going to go try and get as much saddle time as I can on the best horses that I can with the best trainer that I can, right? So the example that I like to use is if you think of a ladder, right? So this is what's required to be a good rider is you need a horse that you can learn on. So the nicer that horse is, the easier that horse is to ride, the more you can learn, right? And so that's one side of the ladder. Other side of the ladder is your knowledge base, right? So that can be your trainer, that can be your previous experience, all that stuff, right? And so the rungs that connect the two are essentially your ability to apply what you know to your horse. And so if you have a ton of knowledge, but you're just like physically blocked and like everything's super stiff, it's going to become a problem applying it over here.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. And so so it's not a problem on this side. It's just if we can remove this as a bottleneck, then that lets you shoot up because you're solving the problem that actually needs solving. Right. And so what we focus on is just the ability to use your body, which breaks down into access, right? So that would be the more flexibility stuff of like, can I get into these lengthened positions? And then control over it, right? So that's where the strength comes in. So it's not useful to be able to just drop down into the splits. But if I can use my muscles in those lengthened positions, like the splits, so the ability to contract and have strength, that's what helps. So it's access, control, and then being able to do that for a long time. So it's the longevity of it, because the more you ride, the more your body starts to break down. Because riding inherently, just by the nature of it being something that you do, it creates imbalances, right? So you're sitting at a chair. If you sit at a chair for several hours, your hip flexors start to get tight.
Yeah.
That's normal. And so it's the same with riding. If you ride and certain muscles in your hips are going to start to kind of lock up and they're going to get used to that position, they're going to handle a lot of tension. So we have to go undo that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. Then in what way do the personalized workouts in the SR90, if I'm correct, fitness plan contribute to achieving basically how you mentioned in your even in your website, softness, suppleness, and muscle tone for riders?
Yeah. So the SR90 stands for supple rider in 90 days. It's just a fun way of saying it. But so normally most people stay with us for usually about 9 months to a year. And so that first 90 days is more like we can kind of just set the base. But it really depends on the individual. And so it's essentially you have to evaluate where someone is in order to know where they need to go, right? So there are standards, right? So there are things that like movements of the body that we use as goals to shoot at. One of those is a Jefferson curl, which I won't explain, but essentially being able to put your wrists below your toes. So like leaning forward, straight legs, and you could think palms to the floor. Right? That would just be one example. And so but if someone has like a back problem or a hamstring problem, we're going to have to like take further steps back to kind of work where they're at and then progress them forward.
Oh, right.
And so same with like the knees, is there's exercises where it's like, okay, if the goal is to be able to do this % of your body weight on this movement, but it's like, but you have some like knee achiness and just kind of like old injuries, stuff like that, of like, it's going to take some time to build up that strength.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It really depends on the individual. I know that's not a helpful answer, but
no, but it does, because you can't really have like a fixed cutout, like template as to how to do it. You need to really curate it with the
and I tried that. And what we ended up doing was we had people got good results with the template. And then it was like, once they kind of got through that, we had to change it because it just was no longer beneficial for them. So that's when we pivoted to the more one-on-one personalized.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how has your experience been? So when you work with clients, and what are some notable transformations and improvements you have kind of witnessed with their riding abilities?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing it does is, again, so the best way you're going to get better at riding is by riding more. And so, but what it does do is it's like, okay, the ability to feel and use the body goes up significantly, right? So it's just easier to like your trainer says, hey, do this with your leg, and like, got it. Like, because you can actually feel those muscles. You'd be surprised how many people think they have feeling over their body and they don't.
I've personally
Right?
had that experience myself.
Yeah. And then the other part of it is like most riders just feel like they're kind of blocked in their own body. And so that block is now removed. And so they just feel like they can just flow a little bit better. It's easier to like just flow and let the horse move with you. So those would be the two biggest ones in terms of the riding. There's just better feel and less tightness. And then day-to-day life is just typically aches and pains start to go away. They just feel better overall. And yeah, just better moving is the
Just
best way
better
to explain.
moving. Yeah, I guess they
Yeah.
feel more confident as well in the saddle because they know that they're not all stiff and they're more flexible. And
Yeah, when it's like the when you build muscle, you add more motor units into the muscles. So
right.
you're literally connecting more motor units into your body, which is connecting your brain to the muscles, right? So bodybuilders talk about like getting mind-muscle connection.
Yeah.
That's what you do when you build muscle, is you quite literally connect your feeling from your brain to your muscles.
Oh, right. That
So you
makes
just become more aware, and if you're doing it right, your posture becomes better. And if you're getting flexible, your hips stop hurting, right? And so it stops
Yeah.
pulling on your low back, and everything just starts to move a little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay. That actually makes sense. Thank you for that answer. How would you envision Equibody to kind of help in the equestrian world, like in future? What do you kind of see it being as an impact for a rider?
Yeah. I think big picture is just making it normal to work out as riders. Right. And so it's like if they like it's one of the only sports where people don't cross train.
Right.
And so I think that's one big part of it. And the reason I think that that's so is because if you do most other training plans, like if you train like bodybuilders train, or you train like most athletes train, it's not going to help you in the riding.
Right.
And so I think what we're doing here is kind of designing like, hey, this is what it looks like to be a rider, and these are the things that riders need. And so let's train that outside of the saddle and be able to do that more. Because again, it's access control for a long period of time. It's like if you can do those three things, you can ride a lot more and a lot better, which is going to let you get better.
Right.
And so the idea is if we can, like a football player, for example, might go train to be able to withstand being tackled, right? But if you're riding horses, you don't need to train like that.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right. And so it doesn't make sense for you to train like that. So it's very sport specific of if I can get my body just working better and get my the hardware, right? Like on a computer, get the hardware working better, then the software can just do its job. Right.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking this question as well, like now for people like in parts of the world, like in Sri Lanka, like lots of people are not very pro athletes per se. And what would you tell them in the sense, like, do you advise, even if you are just riding as, leisurely, do you advise them to still stay in a sort of like a fitness routine or something which keeps their body moving outside of the saddle, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's hard to make an argument against exercise being good for you. And so starting from that point of, I do think exercise is good for you. But I don't think most people will work out because it's good for them. Like, again, that's something that wouldn't be very incentivizing for me, right? If someone said, you should do this thing, therefore go do it, that's not very incentivizing, right? But if I can say, hey, this is your goal to be a better rider, which most riders want, it's like, here's how this is helping you get there. That's more incentivizing.
Oh, makes sense.
Right. So if you can create an incentive for why someone would do something, much more likely to do it. Right. And so, and that was when I first started making content, that was the mistake I made, was I was like, exercise is good for you, therefore you should exercise.
Yeah.
And don't care. It was just fair, right? You feel like it's fair. No one likes being told this is what you should do. It's okay. Here's why I think that this would be helpful.
Yeah,
and that has
definitely. So when you're balancing your role as a rider and a fitness coach, I'm sure it's like very challenging, and you must be having times where like oh, do I actually have like time to do all this? So like, how do you manage and prioritize your time between these two roles?
Um, I don't do much else. So I like working. I like riding.
Yeah.
And so I have some very good friends. I don't really go out. I don't party. I don't do anything like that. So like I enjoy working.
Yeah.
Typically my ideal split is I'll work through the morning. And so I'll get up. I like to get up earlier, and then I'll work till about noon or so. And then
Okay.
typically around then I'll go to the barn. But because it's summertime, we have it flipped. So it's why I'm talking to you now. Is normally I'll go to the barn in the morning and then work and then do stuff in the afternoon.
Oh, okay. That's really nice. And can you share some sort of like advice for anyone who's aspiring to be a dressage rider or anyone who wants to really excel in the sport? Even like it doesn't have to be dressage, just as a rider in general.
First thing we do, and anyone who wants to come work with us, is we do a call where we just kind of talk, and so it's like me and them, where we can and eventually I want to get like another coach who can do that for me, but it's like, let's talk and let's see like what problem you're solving and whether or not that's something that we can actually help with. And so because oftentimes we get people who come in who just started riding and they like want to come work with us, and it's like, cool, I think this would be helpful for you, but you've only been riding for a year and you're riding once a week. And so it's like, what I would do is take the money that you would spend here, go use that to get more saddle time, like go from once a week to 3 times a week, and you will learn to ride better. And so I think if someone's starting, best thing to do, find the best trainer you can find. And that can be books, that can be whatever, just like whatever trainer you can get that can teach you stuff, go there and then get as much saddle time as you can that's safe. Would be my advice, would be get safe saddle time.
Yeah.
And try and do as much of that as you can. Because if your body's not a problem, then you don't need me. Right? Like if you're not struggling, there's no need for you to do that. But if you ride more, you will start to have problems in your body, and that's where I can help out.
That's where you help it. I'm aware that you're studying psychology, or you finished the
Sort of.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I did my first 2 years. I started as a psychology major. I now switched to business, but yeah.
Oh, that's really impressive. So I actually wanted to ask you, how do you feel that would influence your approach to working with horses and understanding their behavior, their psychological behavior? Have you kind of drawn like a link between the two or something?
Yeah. Yes. I think I've learned more about behavior generally from the Bible. So I'm a Christian, and so like that's where I've learned most of like human behavior, and that has yet to prove me wrong. And so I think when it comes to horses, of it's like approaching them with the heart of a servant, in the sense of it's like, okay, what does this horse need? And can I work towards that end? Right. So my mare right now, very challenging mare. And so I would love to when I first started riding her, I like had a very challenging gelding, very different ride, who needed a little bit more strength.
Right.
Like he needed me to kind of come on and add some strength and like really get him to come together. My mare, Sakari, does not need that. She needs like very, very like gentle, playful, like very like just like that, and not as intense. So I've had to completely shift how I approach it, because that's what she needs. That's right. And so learning to become a little bit of like that, okay, like what do you need, and showing up for her in that way. And that's been hard. And I think it's because it makes me feel better to want to do what I want to do. Right. If it's easy for me to ride one way, that's what I want to do. But if she needs this, then that's what we're going to do.
Finally, we've come to our last question, which is, what do you believe is like the key to building a strong relationship with your horse?
I think you have to put the horse's needs above your desires. As someone who struggles with pride, I think ego is the enemy. And so it's like, if your ego is getting in the way of, you want to be seen as some sort of rider, like you want to be seen as XYZ thing, and you're not actually doing the training that the horse needs, I think that's where you get into trouble.
Right.
because then it's about you.
Then it's about you.
And I think when you can meet the horse where it's at and what it needs, and you can provide that, that doesn't mean like always give the horse treats, right? It's like my mare, you need to learn to sit and push.
Push.
And so it's like, that's what she needs.
Yeah.
And it would be easier, and I would feel better as a rider because it wouldn't be as hard if I
Yeah.
just let her go around on the forehand and put so much pressure there. But that's not what she needs. Right? So
Yeah.
it's a small example, but hopefully that
It's
makes sense.
yeah, it does. And what was your mare's name again?
Sakari,
Oh, right.
Sakari.
Right. That's so nice. That's so nice to know. But yeah, thank you so much, Jack, for joining today. Unfortunately, that was our last question. I think we have like so many more to ask you because you're very interesting and you have a lot to, I feel, even give out to other questions, especially through your brand and everything. But thank you so much for joining today. And we wish you all the best and we hope to see Equibody Fitness in achieving all its success. So yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
It was a
Of
pleasure
course.
meeting you.
Yeah, you too.